Hi, this is Gayatri, and welcome to the Enzo Circle. We're a therapeutic reading group where we use books on mental health, well being, spirituality, wellness, self contemplation, Buddhism in a therapeutic manner. We meet every Sunday at 8 p.m. This particular session that you're listening to is an edited excerpt from the session on 14th of January 2024. It's a revision as we're doing the wind-up of the 2023 books. So it's a summary of a few chapters in Pema Chödrön's When Things Fall Apart. You will not hear the voices of any of the participants whose identities cannot be revealed since it's a therapeutic group. However, you are welcome to join us for the live sessions and the interactive sessions. You'll find the sign-up link on my website. And the books that we'll be doing in 2024 include The Myth of Normal, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, The Courage to be Disliked, Don't Believe Everything You Think, What Makes You Not a Buddhist, and Poetry Pharmacy. We begin next week on Sunday, so do listen in and do join us. Chapter 12, she's talking about growing up. Now, what does she mean by growing up? Especially when we've sort of realized the obstacles and sort of seen the maras in our life. She says, in my office, there's a scroll with Japanese calligraphy and a painting of Zen master Bodhidharma, who's a fat, grumpy-looking man with bushy eyebrows. And the calligraphy reads, pointing directly at your own heart, you find Buddha. In fact, I just saw a tweet that somebody had put out, one of the monks, that said, you will not find non-differentiation in the world, the unconditioned in the world. You can only find that in your heart. So that kind of like feeds into what she's saying here, pointing directly at your own heart, you find the Buddha. And I think one of the problems and what she means by growing up is there's a sort of child-like seeking and there's an adolescent seeking in which we sort of assume that going into the world, we will find what we need. It's like, we take retreats, we go to the Himalayas, we go on, we'll try this, we'll try that. Anybody who offers us a solution, we're willing to try it. And there's this growing up phase in which it suddenly hits you. It's not out there. It's me. I've got to just sit down and be peaceful wherever I am. And I feel that's what she, in essence, means when she's talking about this chapter of growing up. And eventually, everything that we're studying out in the world, every philosophy, every ideology, every way of being, is studying yourself. And she says maybe the reason there are dharma talks and books is just to encourage us to understand the simple teaching. All the wisdom about how we cause ourselves to suffer and all the wisdom about how joyful and vast and uncomplicated our minds are can only be found in our own experience. And so that is essentially what she's saying in this chapter. And she says sometimes we can lose our sense of humor when we sit with our own minds, very grim, we're very determined, we take it up like this big sadhana and we use very big words about this process of self-exploration. And when we lose the joy, this is important to understand, I feel, when we lose the joy, we lose our ability to sustain our engagement. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to do it for long. If it's grim, if it's boring, if it's all negative, if it's just pointing to yourself and blaming yourself for everything you see and trying to improve. And a lot of people will, for instance, come to therapy and say, I want to improve myself. If you're seeing yourself as a project you need to fix, a problem that needs a solution, you're not going to enjoy it very much for a long time. And you'll do it for a while and then you're like, oh my God, this is so exhausting. It's fine. I'm good, And so along with clear seeing, that is seeing who you are, there is also kindness. And without kindness towards yourself, compassion towards yourself, honesty towards yourself, you don't really progress. Okay. So basically, kindness, she says, is a down to earth, everyday way to describe the important ingredient that balances out the whole picture and helps us connect with unconditional joy. As the Vietnamese teacher Thich Nhat Hanh says, suffering is not enough. So it is kindness, it is compassion towards yourself, it is discipline, it is honesty, it is clarity, it is respecting yourself. And these are all part of growing up. The joy, sort of not seeing solutions as one sided, not seeing yourself as the problem, not thinking the solution is out there and it's something that has to be given to you. And this, when we start approaching ourselves in this grown up kind of way, you know, somewhere seeking a solution outside ourselves is also dishonesty, because then you're abdicating your role and your responsibility. You're saying, look, okay, fine, I'm the problem. And it's a bit passive aggressive also. Say, okay, fine, I'm the problem. Where's the solution? You know, somebody has to come and give it to you. That's not mature. So the point of growth begins with that growing up where you say, okay, what can I do to be more honest, to be more open, to be more kind, to be more compassionate? And then the healing begins. And then that is in itself the solution. Just that, even that, it's not what comes because of that. Even just opening the door in that way to yourself and to the world, that itself removes the separation from yourself and the world. You know, it's not me versus them. It's just me. And that is a grown-up way to approach healing and enlightenment and wisdom and our way in the world. So chapter 13, she talks about widening the circle of compassion. And it's not really about, because we have this idea that compassion is working with those less fortunate than ourselves. And however, when we study compassion really, we see that compassionate action is a practice, and there's nothing more advanced in relating with others. And to communicate with others with a sense of compassion means to have respect, to have a sense of openness, to have a sense of equality, and to have a sense of non-judgment. Okay, so, and what does that mean to have that compassion is to not be caught up in our idea of who people should be or how they should behave or how the situation should turn out. So we cannot have compassion where we have judgment, you know, and being compassionate is difficult. It's not easy. You know, so she gives the example of Roshi Bernard Glassman, is a Zen teacher in New York who moves into areas of society that he had rejected, you know, to serve and to work with them. And he says that working with the idea of people who you reject is working with the parts of yourself that you reject. So this is sort of extending it's not even a metaphor, it is very real once you start living it, that the world becomes projection of ourselves, our minds. So there are parts of ourselves that we, when we have the strong resentment or resistance to something in the world, we need to look at ourselves and realize that we're resisting from something. We're resisting from somewhere. And what that resistance is what towards ourselves is our resistance in the world. And therefore, the more we work, and in a way, that's why the world becomes a solution, right? Because whatever we detest or we resist or we have very, very strong emotions towards, or what we resent, when we start working with them, it really is the birth of compassion. And I think when we were discussing this in the class, we were also talking about how people work in prisons. And I think I gave the example of the my psychology teacher who began the semester by saying, "Would you work with a rapist?" And we all began by saying, "No, no, no. I mean, I would just refer, you know." And then halfway through the semester, she would ask us the question again, and then it was like, "Okay, maybe, because this is my work, and what's the point if I'm..." And then at the end of it, it's like, absolutely yes, because that is my work in the world, And I find that trajectory is probably the single most insightful thing I learned out of counseling school, because that is the birth of compassion. What you detest, what you resent, what you have resistance to, what you judge, once you start engaging with it, your heart and mind starts opening up and you realize this is what I have to work with. And it's not even an option by the end of it, because you realize that's our work in the world. It's like, all the rest of us run away from fire, but it's the fireman's job to run towards the fire. And if you're going to put on the coat of a fireman and put on the hat and have the paraphernalia, you cannot run away from the fire. That's an abdication. So if you're going to put on the garb of somebody who's working towards self-awareness, whether as a therapist or as an individual, and say, there is compassion and there is non-judgment and there is space for growth and correction for all of us, no matter who we are and what we've done, you can't then sit and say, there are these people who must not have a chance at redemption. As a therapist, you might be their only chance at redemption. Which sounds extremely pompous and egoistic. But I don't mean it like, oh, look at me, I'm here. It's not a savior complex. It is that is the opportunity that has been created, that there is somebody who has come to your door and said, can you help me? Or somebody who, maybe the policeman has forced him to come and receive help, or a judge has forced him to come and receive help. And he doesn't see that he has a chance to be another way. And that's your opportunity to use everything you're claiming to have. So why would you not use that opportunity? Right? So that is, what she's basically saying about widening the circle of compassion. There is no point until it's either judgment or compassion. So she says, Buddhist words such as compassion and emptiness don't mean much until we start cultivating our innate ability simply to be there with pain, with an open heart, and the willingness not to instantly try to get ground under our feet. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Enzo Circle. You are listening to an edited excerpt from the live interactive session of our reading group. You can participate and join from anywhere in the world. We meet on Sundays at 8 p.m. and the sign up is via the link on my website www.shamaha.co.